nobody objects, I'll call the meeting to order and read my opening remarks. Seeing no objections. Excellent. Welcome to the January 28th, 2025 meeting of the Planning Board. First, we'll take a roll call to introduce board members and staff. Kate Nee.
Here.
Josh Ames.
Here.
Phil Giordano.
I'm here.
Sean Weller.
Here.
I'm Ellen Rawlings. I'm also here. We're also joined by Amanda Wolf, who is our housing and land use planner, Elijah Romulus, our town planner, Jess Cole, our recording secretary, and Jack Hatfield from Westwood Media Center. This meeting is recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live on local cable television Comcast Channel 6 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also live on the Westwood Media Center's YouTube channel. If you're interested in joining the meeting via Zoom, you can find the login directions in the Planning Board meeting notice that is posted to the calendar section of the town's webpage at https://www.townhall.westwood.ma.us/. We will begin the meeting with only the board members and staff unmuted and on video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we will unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they are not speaking in order to minimize background noise. For applications, the chair will first invite the applicant to address the board and give a presentation summarizing what is being requested. Board members received the application materials prior to the meeting and will have reviewed them. Board members may ask questions during and following the presentation. Staff and outside experts will provide comments to the board. If the issue includes a public hearing, the board will then proceed to the public comment portion of the public hearing and will restate the instructions. In this remote meeting format, residents and guests may participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized to speak over the Zoom meeting application or from a telephone dial-up. We will be able to hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to the meeting. When we come to that part of the meeting, I will remind everyone of the process. Following the public comment portion, the board will deliberate and make a decision or continue the hearing to a specific future date. All remote meetings require that votes be taken by roll call. When a motion and second has been made, the chair will ask if there is any further discussion before proceeding to a roll call vote and will then restate the results of the vote. All right, Elijah, do we have any changes to our agenda this evening?
No, we do not.
Excuse me. All right, then we can proceed with our first agenda item, which is 101 High Street. Continuation of a public hearing for a consideration of a shared driveway special permit approval for a shared driveway for 5 single-family residences at 101 High Street, continued from November 19th, 2024. And I see members of the applicant's team. Welcome back.
Thank you all. Appreciate your patience as we work through a number of comments, feedback from the community and the planning board. Madam Chair, would you like me to proceed with our presentation?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My name is Zach Richards. I'm with Bowler Engineering, and we're the civil engineer for the project, representing Supreme Companies and Development. And this is for, again, 101 High Street. It's been quite a bit of time coming on this project, and appreciate your patience again as we work through a lot of community feedback, as well as a lot of good input from both the planning board and the Conservation Commission, as well as the town departments throughout the permitting review process. We originally submitted back in July, and we had our first hearing in July. We've had a number of planning board and Conservation Commission hearings since, some of them joint hearings. And we did have site walks with both the planning board and the Conservation Commission back in late fall, early winter. I think that was really helpful to allow everyone to witness the site for themselves, see a lot of the constraints, some of the challenging topography, but also better understand how we were really trying to be thoughtful in laying out this shared driveway in order to minimize some of the impacts to the area and provide still a little bit of a buffer, maintain some of that existing vegetation along High Street, and work the best we could with the topography to serve the future lots and the future single family homes. So we've been working close with the community. We've been adjusting the plan that we had in front of the boards initially, and I think we've come up with a great plan that really does our best to incorporate and address all the feedback that we heard throughout the process. With that, I'm going to go ahead and just share a brief presentation to remind everyone of the site and show everyone where we landed with the project. So again, 101 High Street. This is a quick slide just to show and remind the board of what was initially submitted in front of the board. So this shows, again, 5 lots, single family, High Street at the bottom of the page. This is the intersection with Louder Brook Drive, and reuse of the existing curb cut to serve a shared driveway, which again, we were in front of both the planning board for a special permit and the Conservation Commission for notice of intent, due to the wetlands, which you see again shown in blue on the left side of the screen. So that's the wetland line shown in blue. This first buffer is the 30-foot no disturb buffer, and then the 100-foot buffer shown in green here. So initially we contemplated, 5 lots here. And we showed again the future homes, where we anticipated them landing, as well as the lot lines, proposed lot lines shown in orange. Flipping ahead, basically showing you a comparison and an overlay of what we initially submitted versus where we landed. The currently proposed lot lines, those are shown in blue on this slide. We've still shown the previously submitted future homes locations in orange, and then the currently shown for reference and submitted future homes are shown in blue. So as you can see, a lot of what we've been working through is not changes to necessarily the special permit shared driveway per se, but trying to understand and get to a good final landing point on what we thought the full build and the single family home layout would be, to try to accomplish everyone's goals here. So you can see those slid a lot forward, particularly lot A, right? That home slid forward quite a bit. That accomplished a number of things that limited the overall disturbance on the site. It limited or reduced the impervious area. It reduced the tree impacts, right? And the amount of tree removal required as part of the project. And that really, we felt, resulted in still a very good project. Achieved the goal of 5 single family homes and 5 single family lots, but while minimizing the impacts to the town, the community, and the wetlands, which I think was really well received by the Conservation Commission when we presented it to them last month in December, and received approval for the order conditions at that time. So again, as some of the things I pointed out was shortened driveway lengths with this, really trying to consolidate some of the single family developments closer to High Street towards the front half of the site. And really, I'll point out that the shared driveway design itself was largely unchanged with this. It was really tweaks and adjustments and reconciliation to make sure we understood what that full build design looked like and where those future home locations wanted to land. This did go through peer review. Since the time we met last, we've addressed all of the peer review comments. One of those things was just pointing out the gate access location to this basin that's managing both the shared driveway and a lot of the future full build development. So we've clarified that on the plans and made that very clear. As part of this, we've also refined that stormwater basin design, so the footprint was able to shrink a little bit based on some of the updates that I alluded to before, is the reduction in disturbance as part of this latest full build design, and reduced impervious based on pulling some of those home locations forward. So all we think great improvements to the neighborhood, the abutters, and obviously with respect to the resource areas. So um, with that, I'm going to turn it over really quickly to Jay Emperor from our office and team to talk a little bit about the landscape design that went with this special permit submission.
Thanks, Zach. Good evening, everybody. Jay Emperor with Boulder. I'm a landscape architect and senior project manager there. So I'm going to address a couple of questions and clarifications that came up at the previous hearing. One of those items was snow storage. So the revised plan here indicates an 8 to 10 foot wide level lawn area on the north side of the proposed driveway for snow storage. One benefit of that is any runoff from that will be directed to the proposed stormwater system. So that's a benefit. Soil depths was another comment. Based on test pits on the site, we anticipate anywhere from 2 to 5 feet of depth of soil to bedrock. So the proposed trees were indicated in the areas where no cut or minimal cut is anticipated. And then shrubs are placed in areas where we might have less soil, approximately 18 to 2 feet of soil. So that's how we addressed that. And then tree replacement. We anticipate 31 trees being removed from the 100-foot buffer and about 73,000 square feet of disturbance beyond that. So the chart on the upper right indicates a requirement for 245 trees, and we exceed that with a combination of trees and the 4-to-1 shrubs allowed for about 293 trees, I believe. And then all the vegetation, it will all be native vegetation, both shrubs and trees.
With that, I believe that concludes our update and presentation. We welcome any and all questions from the board. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you. Excuse me. At this time, I'd ask for, I know we don't have any peer review, but I'd ask for staff input, and then we'll go into board member questions and comments.
Yes, so the applicant has met I believe 5 iterations of the peer review. They've gone through the extensive process to address all the concerns there. There were no further department comments outside of Deb Mustwood Water District, and the applicant has worked out the needs with them as well. And seeing that the applicant was able to work out issues with the neighboring abutters, as well as getting a approval from the Conservation Commission, I would leave it to the board to discuss.
Thank you very much. All right, then I'm happy to open up the floor to board member questions and comments. Sorry, I thought I saw a hand. Yes, Sean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I first want to commend you for how much thought has gone into this and how much I sense that you've done a lot of communication with abutters, and we've even received some nice notes to that extent as well on the planning board. So thank you for working on this, and I think making quite a tasteful design out of this area, which is certainly a tricky topography to work with. One final question: do you anticipate much movement at all in the final positions of the houses, or are you pretty certain that's, roughly where the footprints will land at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We put more thought into it during the time that we had, obviously, to address some more of the butter feedback and community feedback. I think we feel pretty confident that this is very close to where they land. Might there be a couple tweaks and adjustments from here to what you actually see constructed there? Like, likely there will be, but I think We've tried to put a lot more thought into those and refine that as part of this process. So what you end up with is very close to what's shown on the plans.
All right, thanks. That's all for.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions, comments from board members? Phil?
Yes, just are there any outstanding issues with the abutters or have they signed off?
As far as I know, the abutters are happy with this new design. I did reach out to one abutter today, and he was supposed to, hopefully he reached out to Elijah or somebody on the board saying that that they're satisfied, but this the end result that last time we've met, that the abutters were satisfied with this design.
Okay, so you're at a minimum, you're very close, and you've worked with them with respect to these revisions.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then Conservation Commission is signed off and nothing left outstanding. Is that correct?
I think we have to go, I think we're signed off. Zach, what's the reason why we have to go back again in February for, I think it's a small amendment?
Yeah, it's some fine-tuned adjustments since their approval, but I think they approved it at their last hearing and issued
Right.
order conditions. It's just a matter of we're actually going back to them for the full build now. So since then we've done the full build design and that'll be submitted to them in the next week or so, and we'll be back for the notice of intent for Lot A and the stormwater permits for the remaining lots.
Okay, so and totals on tree removal and replacement, what were the numbers?
Zach, if you could zoom into that chart, it's a little smaller. I think it's 245 removed and 292 replaced. Combination of
Okay,
trees and shrubs.
I would have needed a magnifying glass to be able to see that, but okay.
Right.
Those are it. I'll echo Member Weller that I think you guys did a lot of work and appreciate you coming back multiple times and the work you've done on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for working with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Any other questions or comments from board members? Josh?
Hey guys, I think this is a vast improvement over the previous iteration, so thanks for your work. Curious about the maintenance of the stormwater system. Who's going to be responsible for that? Is that built in anywhere in terms of funding?
Pete, you want to handle that
Yeah,
question?
if I could, we're gonna be required, we're gonna do it anyway, but one of the conditions that we've seen on your draft decision is that we will be creating a homeowners association. We're actually still seeing how far they're gonna go. Clearly, the homeowners association is gonna be taking care of the shared driveway as well as the shared stormwater system. We also decided that it would probably make sense that we don't want individual homeowners plowing their driveway down to the shared driveway. So we're going to probably incorporate that the homeowners association will actually be responsible for snow and ice removal across all of the driveways so that there's some continuity. In terms of the stormwater, clearly, as I say, the homeowner association would be responsible for anything that's going into what I'll call the shared system. So anything that has to do with the shared driveway. And again, depending upon the actual designs of each individual driveway and each individual house, there could be some stormwater where an individual house, for instance, may have stormwater that's just stormwater system that's totally separate from anything else. That homeowner would probably be responsible for that. But if there's any way that it ties into the shared driveway system, then that would be under the homeowners association as well. And a typical homeowner association would have the ability to, I'll use the word raise funds, via a monthly annual fee that is held in order to accomplish what it needs to accomplish.
And I guess that governance around that is already going to be well in motion by the time we approve this, and the O&M manuals for the stormwater systems will be provided, and you guys have all that in hand?
Yeah, that's all been provided to date, and as Peter alluded to, I think we worked with Elijah to hammer out a condition that basically requires that
Perfect.
the appropriate parties sign on to those, right? As
Yep.
as the
Prior,
project
prior
proceeds.
to construction.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Any other board member comments, questions? I'm scrolling through quickly. I'm not seeing anybody else's hands raised. Just two quick things for me. I'm delighted with your planting plan and your species selection. I rarely see people propose tulip tree. I think it's a highly underrated tree and it's very unique. And I'm really happy to see that in this planting plan. Also, I just appreciate your sensitivity to really, I didn't have a problem with, none of them were non-Massachusetts natives. So nice job, really well done. And my only question was, I did notice in one of the abutter letters, their letter of support to the Concom, they had asked the Concom to try and ensure protections for the remaining mature tree canopy as one of their conditions. And I did not have time to pull the order of conditions and look at it. So that's probably more of a question for staff. Was any of that within Concom's purview to bake in? I'm just curious.
Can you say the last part, Madam Chair?
Oh, sure. The request was if for the Concom in their order of conditions, which I know they issued in December, to kind of try and ensure protections for the mature tree canopy that will not be disturbed as part of this project. And I was just more curious, was that something they were able to do as part of their conditions, or is that not really within their purview?
I would have to look through the order of conditions to confirm that. They will have opportunities later down the line with the actual build outs of the other lots as well.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Obviously, that's not really our purview, but I noticed that in the letter that I read as part of our packet, and it was just a matter of interest. But otherwise, I have no other comments. I will share the sentiments of my colleagues that I really appreciate the level of care and thought that you put into redesigning this. And I think this proposal, I appreciate that it minimizes the impacts in a lot of ways. So I think that's terrific. Any other comments from board members, staff, anybody?
I'm looking through the order of conditions now to see if there was anything about it.
Oh, thank you. I'll give you a minute for that. As this is a public hearing, I'll take this opportunity to open up the floor for public comment. And then Amanda, if you find anything, we can loop back on that before we move to a motion. But yes, if there are members of the public that would like to ask a question or share a comment, feel free to either raise your hand and we can enable you to speak, or you can use the chat. I'm sorry, not the chat, the Q&A feature in the Zoom application. Either way, please just make sure to include your full name and address for the record. I'll give that a minute. I am not seeing any hands raised, nor am I seeing anything in the Q&A. All right, I'll give a last call for board member or staff comments or questions. And if there are none others, I'd be willing to entertain a motion if someone's willing to make one. Kate, yes.
Actually, Madam Chair, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I did just want to go back to say thank you for this design, which has such minimal impact on pedestrians and traffic on this street. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness and, just from the get-go, thinking about having minimal impact there is just, I'm very grateful to you for having thought of it this way. I know that it also works out very well from a development point of view, but I really, as somebody who's on the Ped Bike advisory committee, safety advisory committee, this is something we care about a great deal. So the safety of our residents in the town. So I really appreciate this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Amanda, yes.
All right, so I did a really quick look, so I might not be catching everything, but the only thing I'm seeing is the protection of plantings in the wetlands and the buffer zones. I'm not seeing the only thing related to mature plants is in the wetlands. I don't think they have purview beyond that, but I defer to Elijah on that.
Thank you. That was kind of my question, is that it seemed like kind of a broad ask, not necessarily an ask I would not support, but I just wasn't sure what the actual authority for future homeowners, to how far they could reach on that. It was more, just a curiosity. Yes, Sean.
I'll just weigh in on that because I tend to have some familiarity with what the Concom's working on. My understanding, and Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but because the stormwater disturbance on the individual lots will be, the land disturbance on the individual lot parcels will be large enough for the footprints of the homes. This will have to go back to the Concom, as Zach mentioned earlier, for a review, not just under the wetlands protection bylaw, but under a stormwater review. And the Conservation Commission's tree and plant guidelines extend to stormwater reviews as well. So there are protections in that regard.
Thank you. That is helpful, and hopefully helpful for anyone who's watching our meeting or attending it later, or watching it later, if that question were to come up. So thank you for the discussion around that. I do see a hand up in the attendees. We have Mark Callahan. Mark, we can enable you to speak. Again, we would just need your full name and address for the record.
Hi, this is Mark Callahan, 20 Grove Street. I'm direct abutter to the proposed Lot E. And then just wanted to commend the applicant on working with the neighborhood and staff. And I just had a quick question on the intro. Zach mentioned that the basin handles the driveway from a stormwater perspective, and then he said a lot of the future homes. So just curious, has it been sized to accommodate just a couple of the homes that are shown, or some of them? I'm just curious how that's been designed.
Sure. As you can imagine, Mark, and thank you for the kind words. I think, again, from your perspective too, hopefully you're happy with where we landed, as I understand. But a lot of the slopes continue up to the homes, right, as the individual driveways go up there. So the anticipation is that a lot of most of the driveways will be handled as they run downhill, into that basin collectively. And then we plan on handling the roof runoff itself with a independent system for each home that would manage the roof runoff. So just given the topography out there, it's challenging to capture the driveways anywhere else but the basin. So that we thought that made a lot of sense with the design.
Got it. No, that's great.
Just some further clarification, Mr. Callahan. The scope of the basin is specifically for the shared driveway. However, there will be multiple opportunities through the Conservation Commission for them to review the runoff in future builds.
Understood. Thanks for that clarification, and hopefully those are a lot quicker and smoother for you guys.
Thank you.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your comments. All right. I'm not seeing any other raised hands, either from public or from board members or staff. I still don't see anything in the Q&A. So again, if anyone else would like to comment, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I would happily entertain a motion. I think we have a few to go through.
Yes, I have an updated list of motions if the board is so inclined for waiver as well as special permit conditions.
I am happy to take it. I, Sean Weller, move that the planning board grant the following waivers in association with the application for the shared driveway special permit approval for 101 High Street as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on July 3rd, 2024. 1. Waiver from strict compliance with section 7.3.7.3 of the Westwood zoning bylaw requiring the submission of a full traffic study.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the waivers? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Josh?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion carries.
All right. I, Sean Weller, move that the planning board grant the shared driveway special permit for 101 High Street as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on July 3rd, 2024, subject to the following conditions. 1 is except as modified by the conditions and findings hereof, the project shall comply with the project plans and with the conditions of all prior decisions for the property in all respects, and the applicant shall pursue completion of the project with reasonable diligence and continuity. 2, if the project or any condition imposed in this decision requires any other permit, license, or other approval from any town of Westwood board, commission, or agency, or other Commonwealth or federal regulatory agency, the applicant shall make an appropriate application for the same and shall obtain all required approvals prior to the start of any work. If any condition of such permit, license, or other approval from any other board, committee, or agency is inconsistent with this decision, the applicant shall make application to the planning board for an amendment of this decision, and the planning board shall consider such application in accordance with the requirements of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 9, and all applicable planning board rules and regulations. 3, any proposed alterations, modifications, deletions, or changes to the decision shall be requested in writing to the town planner and building commissioner prior to implementation. A, proposed alterations which are considered de minimis by the building commissioner may be accepted as a note to the file. B, proposed alterations which are considered minor by the building commissioner shall require the filing of a modification application of said approval for review by the planning board at a publicly posted planning board meeting. C, proposed alterations which are determined to be major by the building commissioner or by the planning board shall be considered by the planning board as a formal amendment to the approval and will require a new public hearing before the planning board. 4, prior to construction, the applicant shall submit an updated SWPPP and the operations and maintenance plan, OM plan, to include the names, addresses, and daytime telephone numbers of the responsible parties and signatures of owners. Final SWPPP and O&M plan shall be provided to the town planner, town engineer, and conservation agent for review and approval. 5, prior to construction, the applicant shall provide final copies of easements for roadway work, homeowners association documents, landscaping, stormwater management system components, sewer system plans, calculations, and agreements to the town planner, town engineer, and town council for review and approval. 6, applicant is responsible for recording all easement documents with the Registry of Deeds and shall provide proof of recording and recorded copies to the planning board prior to the project turning over to the homeowners association. 7, the shared driveway shall serve only the 5 prospective lots as shown on the project plans. 8, the shared driveway shall not be extended to connect to any other streets or ways except where it originates on High Street. 9, the shared driveway shall not be used as frontage for any buildable lots. 10, there shall be no non-emergency municipal services provided for the shared driveway special permit, including snow removal and recycling trash service on the shared driveway. 11, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any of the 5 proposed residences, completion of the exterior site work, including installation of utilities, landscaping, and infrastructure, shall be completed for the lot for which such occupancy permit is requested. 12, the applicant shall submit a sign plan for review and approval by the town planner for any signage not included in this application and shall obtain sign permits from the building division prior to the installation of any sign on the property. 13, all project-related construction activities shall comply with the timeframe set forth in the town's general bylaws, Chapter 292, for noise and construction, which allows such work Monday through Saturday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and Sunday between the hours of 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. 14, all chemicals used during construction shall be located in a designated containment area and shall be located on an impervious surface designed to prevent the discharge of contaminated runoff into the soil or groundwater. 15, all landscaping approved herein shall be Massachusetts native species and installed at the earliest possible date, but only during the spring growing season running from April 15th through June 15th, or during the fall growing season running from September 15th through November 15th. Any plantings that do not survive shall be replaced in kind in perpetuity at the property owner's expense. 16, a copy of this decision and the project plan shall be kept on the project site at all times during construction. 17, the applicant shall submit as-built plans at the conclusion of construction on a lot, which shall indicate the location of all water quality units, underground storage tanks, pipes, and or appurtenances that remain on the site prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for that lot. The as-built plan shall be delivered in a format approved by the Information Systems Director for compatibility with the Town of Westwood GIS database. 18, the decision shall lapse if a substantial use thereof or construction thereunder has not begun except for good cause within 2 years following the grant thereof. The planning board may extend such approval for good cause upon the written request of the applicant.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Sean,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Phil.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion carries. And we have one more.
I move that the
Before-
planning board.
Wait,
Oh.
1 second. I see it
Yeah.
says shared parking special permit. It should be shared driveway special permit.
All right, thank you. So we will just need Sean to reread that verbiage as an amended motion. Is that correct?
No, this is
No.
just for the motion to close, correct?
That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There were
Oh,
no-
sorry. Yes. Okay. Right. It was, yes, it does not affect anything before that. Okay. Thank you. Good catch.
I would have just read it blindly, so good catch. I, Sean Weller, move that the planning board close the shared driveway special permit public hearing for the shared driveway servicing 5 conforming lots at 101 High Street.
Second.
I have a motion and a second and a third. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Kate,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. That public hearing is closed. Thank you all to the applicant and the design team, and good luck.
Thank you.
We also, you guys aren't leaving us yet, but that was part one. Okay, then our next agenda item is item number 2, continued consideration of proposed approval not required A&R plan for 101 High Street related to what we were just discussing, continued from November 19th, 2024.
Yes, so in combination with this special permit, now that a special permit has been granted, the A&R is that is proposed does meet all of the criteria for the planning board to endorse, and so I would suggest the planning board do so.
Thank you. I'll open it up to board member comments, questions on the A&R. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I personally found it quite straightforward. I appreciated the completeness and the revisions. So I had no comments or questions either. So if there are no other comments, questions from staff or board members, I would entertain a motion.
I, Sean Weller, move that the planning board find the approval not required plan for 101 High Street dated May 16th, 2024 and revised through January 21st, 2025 to be complete, and that the board vote to endorse the submitted plan as not requiring approval under the subdivision control laws.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Kate,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. All right. Thank you all. Elijah, we'll get Mylar to sign. All right.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Great. Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
Thank you,
Great,
everyone.
thank you all.
Good night.
Appreciate the
Thank you
time.
all.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Thank you very much. All right. Then moving along to our next agenda item, number 3. My screen's loading. Bear with me. Discussion of additional potential warrant articles for the May 2025 annual town meeting. And are we bringing Nora in?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Sure.
Used to her already being on.
I know. I was looking and I said, "Oh."
Yes, so the planning board has before us we added another article that the select board had moved from miscellaneous to planning board being a 7th article. This is in relation to the major business district. as I had mentioned in the proposal, and Nora can speak to it as well, it is a article, or it is a part of the bylaw that is outdated based on what the town, how the town currently functions, and also the way it is worded does open up some liability as it relates to uses and current uses.
So if I could just give you a little background on this section of the bylaw was adopted, I believe it was in 1993. And that was around the time that I believe there were two developments that were being proposed. I think one was the Prudential development, which eventually ended up being Fox Hill Village, and the other was the N-Star building, which is now Eversource. And I think that the development of those buildings spurred some concern about the size of the developments, and the planning board at that time adopted this section, major business development, to impose a special permit requirement on very large developments. I think they were also thinking about the development of the University Avenue area at that time. This was long before either University Station or before that Westwood Station was even in play. So this zoning section was developed to establish a manner for the planning board to consider projects for a special permit. And I don't really know the reasoning, but there were two classifications of the type of projects they would consider. One was a 50,000 square foot project that was used for a bank, well, financial institution, or a restaurant, fast food establishment, or a printing copy publishing establishment. And then there was another category that was for projects of greater than 175,000 square feet for all other uses. Now, that original section just required, if you wanted to develop anything along those lines, you would go to the planning board for a special permit. Then in 2002, the planning board recodified its zoning bylaw. They restructured the way it was written. And at that time, they created a principal use table, and they put major business development into the principal use table. By doing that, they created it as a use in its own right. And the section then that calls for any other use essentially grants a special permit for a use variance. And Westwood does not allow use variances. If we did, they would go before the ZBA. There was never an intention to have use variances or special permits for uses otherwise not allowed granted by the planning board. So luckily, this section of the bylaw has never been used. It's never been proposed to be used since the bylaw was recodified in 2002. So it hasn't been used to propose an application for the planning board to consider. So this hasn't been a problem. But Mike Perkins and I were looking at this in regards to another planning board article that you're proposing that affects the ARO district, and noticed that major business development was an allowed use, not just in the ARO, not an allowed use, a special permit, planning board special permit use, not only in the ARO, but in every business district, including the local business districts, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because there's no way any of the local business districts could even accommodate 150,000 square foot development. So since 2002, a lot of things have changed in Westwood. We've adopted the flexible multiple use overlay districts. We adopted the University Station, University Avenue mixed use overlay district. And we have firmed up a lot of our sections of the bylaw. As a result, this major business development section simply isn't needed. So the options would be to either correct the inconsistency there with the any other use, or just to delete it. And I strongly recommend that the planning board propose the town meeting simply delete this section of the bylaw and make associated changes, renumbering the subsequent sections appropriately, and then going into other sections of the bylaw that reference major business development and taking that out and replacing it with EIDR where there's a need to require some type of planning board review.
Thank you. Were there any other comments from staff on that? Awesome. Then I'll open up the floor to board member questions, comments. I know we're not planning to have kind of an exhaustive discussion this evening. We're saving that for our next meeting when we open our public hearings, but I think if there's any feedback from the board, now would be the time for staff to hear it, right? So, all right, thank you. Yes, Sean.
Thank you, Nora, and thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any adverse consequences to deleting this section that staff might anticipate based
No, so
on our current development profile?
There are no, so it is not a permissive, it was not intended to be a permissive section. It was intended to be a restrictive section that required another layer of review for any of these types of development. They're already reviewed under EIDR or under flexible multiple use overlay district or under the University Avenue multiple mixed use district. So the planning board already has full review authority. So I don't believe this is necessary. And I don't see any potential consequences because we do not have an active development in a major business development special permit.
Okay. And if my colleagues will humor me with one more question, or comment more so, I'd be curious to see, I'm happy to go give this a look myself, any guidance, whether it's from the FinCom book from that respective year that this was initially implemented or any kind of old planning board meeting minutes, if there was anything in the initial justification for this that we should just be paying heed to. But short of that, I feel like this makes a lot of sense to simplify based on my reading of it.
When you have your hearing in February, we can provide copies of the warrant book for 1993 when the section was adopted. The planning board minutes really from that time just don't have anything other than the proposal for the planning board to move this forward to town meeting. So it doesn't have any explanation in those minutes. They were very brief. And there is a FinCom, as there always is, there's a FinCom explanation of the article. But that also doesn't go into great detail.
Yeah.
But we'll provide that for you at your public hearing on the 11th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think Phil had your hand up next.
Yeah, I just, so this is structured as permissive, but is supposed to be restrictive. Am I correct on that?
Yeah,
And
so it was
go ahead.
restrictive. It was restrictive when it was first adopted in 1993, when the bylaw was recodified and it was put into the principal use table as a permitted use, subject to a planning board special permit. That made it more permissive.
Am I correct that especially given our authority at this time, I don't think there's any change or diminishment of authority on anything. By deletion, it seems like simplification is the best way to go, and that's where I'm coming from. But I just wanted to make sure we're not losing anything, and I can't think of anywhere that we would lose potential authority. Is that fair to say?
I don't believe you're losing any authority. So an applicant could already develop under the EIDR by right, subject to zoning, dimensional requirements and planning board approval, or they could develop by special permit under FMUOD in most areas or under the University Avenue mixed use district. So yeah, I don't see that you're giving up anything, and I don't see that any property owners are losing anything by not having this confusing section of the bylaw. I think that if someone did attempt to develop under it, then the question of what it really says would have to be interpreted, and we'd probably end up
And that ends up more
appeal
complicated
on one side or the other.
Yeah, and then the elimination of complications and need for interpretation is for the best. Okay, that was my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I, of course, am supportive of just deletion. I think that is the simplest. And I just wanted to take this time to thank our planning department for this annual process that they go through, where normally we're just catching typos and missing commas and capitalizations, and always having an eye out for what's actually current and what are the impacts of the words that are in front of you. After all this time, that your eyes don't just glaze over, I'm so grateful. And I support simplifying it as much as possible. That's what we've been doing every year, right? Taking these opportunities to just clarify and simplify, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Josh?
Yeah, totally supportive of deletion. To be frank, I don't care what it was intended to be at whatever point it was proposed. At this point, this almost seems like a housekeeping sort of issue where, the intent has been changed and moved and modified and just confused. So I'm completely supportive of this action.
Thank you.
And then I'll just
And I,
also point out, I just want you to know, so this went to the select board at their meeting on the 22nd to request a reserve article be put forward for the planning board to use if you vote to go forward with this. And it's been advertised for your hearing so that you could, if you choose to, go forward with this article.
thank you. Yeah, I'm also supportive of deletion. What I understood from reading it and from what we just heard from you, it could have, the way it is now with it being included in the use table, if we leave it, it could have some unintended consequences if someone were to invoke it. And we don't want that. So and it's superfluous at this point anyway. So I agree. I think getting rid of it is the right thing to do. And the subsequent zoning over past several years that supersedes it and achieves the original intention is the correct thing to do. Excellent. So we have the placeholder article from the select board, so we can just move forward with that, sponsored by us. Yes. Okay.
That's
Great.
correct.
Was there anything else on that particular article that folks wanted to discuss at this time? Excellent. Was there any other updates on our proposed articles for town meeting for tonight, before we get into our public hearing process?
Yes, so there were a few other sections that were, slightly adjusted. One being the ADU Article 1 for the planning board. That was updated for clarification clarification purposes, but also to reflect the unofficial final regulations that have been.
No, that we haven't made those changes yet. This was released before those came out.
Right, and we are in the
So it was
process
just
of
for
doing that.
clarification.
Right. And so we'll be updating it based on further regulations from HLC.
So the main change, since you saw an earlier draft, was in the calculation of how many units would be 80% AMI, how many would be 50%, and how many would be 30%. The previous chart that had been put into the draft article didn't quite work. It ended up with, in many cases, exceeding 15% affordable units when you added the types of units together. So Elijah and Amanda have worked on a new calculation for your consideration.
Great, thank you.
We
Yes.
also added to the housekeeping article, we added the misspellings and renumberings and clarifications that we found in the bylaw, which you can go through in detail at your hearing on the 11th.
Excellent, thank you. Kate, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say how much I really appreciated the thoughtfulness of the 80% AMI for ownership projects, that we want people to be able to be successful. So I appreciate that footnote. And as always, thank you for being so thoughtful. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. And I'll join in and say, yes, I agree with that. Thank you very much. Were there any other updates or discussion around any of the changes you wanted to share with us this evening?
Not at this time.
All right. Anything else from board members on what we heard this evening? All right. Well, with that, then we will, just as a reminder to anyone and everyone watching, our public hearing where we begin to discuss our warrant articles, our proposed warrant articles for the Springtown meeting is on February 11th. And we hope people will attend and join in that discussion. All right, then our next agenda item is, design guidelines. Consideration to establish design guidelines task force for environmental impact and design review and or special permit applications.
Yes, so I wanted to, so initially I had made a motion to the board to consider establishment of a task force. However, I did want to walk that back, just thinking about the procedure going forward and making sure that there's community buy-in. We thought it would be best to put out um, uh, an advertisement for potential task force members, and then have the board be able to not only vote on establishing a task force, but then being able to appoint interested persons as well at that same meeting. And so my thought was we can update the proposal that the board last looked at based on comments from the January 7th meeting. We have a new version that we can send out after this meeting. And then I can share a flyer with the board and look for any members that would like to join the task force. And I think that would be the best way to go forward. I would suggest taking this up at the March 4th meeting to give us about a month to be able to really advertise in our, the Westwood Wire or things of that nature, and then have the board be able to go out and look for any interested persons.
Thank you.
Let's see. And I can share, I did draft a flyer that I can share for the, anyone who's watching today. They can definitely send a letter of intent. This is really to look at design guidelines throughout town of Westwood, but also, our town villages or nodes as it relates to High Street, Islington, and then areas outside of University Station. So let me see, I can just share right here, and I can, send this to the board after this meeting, but we would like to have anyone interested. We really want to put an emphasis on anyone who's like either a first-time volunteer to any boards or committees, or someone who's who hasn't been on one yet, so we could get some real fresh ideas. And then also you can email the letter of intent to myself, Elijah Romulus, at eromulus@westwoodma.gov. We're putting a soft deadline of the February 28th. If someone gets it to us right after that, then obviously we'd still be accepting it. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there. And yeah, please, we're looking for volunteers.
Thank you. Editorially, I think it would be worthwhile just to give a little guidance on, because there had been recommendations, like obviously some resident representatives, but specifically also in addition to just residents at large. I think we were interested in hearing from architects, commercial property owners, developers / builders. Did I forget anything?
Anyone with maybe historical background, but yes, definitely.
Thank you. Excellent. I'm personally quite excited about this and looking forward to seeing some letters of interest. Phil, yes.
I just, I remember there was an issue regarding preference to people that had not participated in town boards. Is that still kind of considered a criterion, or Because obviously we want to encourage people to attend, participate and whatnot, but I also don't want to discourage people who are active in the town also.
Thanks, Phil. Sean, yes?
Elijah may want to answer this too, but thank you, Madam Chair. I the one benefit of structuring this way, Phil, is that we can, by not doing the actual passage of the motion to establish the task force until March 4th, by then we'll see who's applied, and it's at the planning board's discretion to structure it however we want. So certainly I believe the flyer shared that staff prepared had kind of a call for new volunteers, including people who haven't been involved before. And I like to keep that language because I think it's encouraging of some new voices, but we aren't precluded from reviewing and including applicants who have some experience if we get someone who would be a reasonable fit for what we're trying to do. If that makes sense.
Okay. I guess agnostic about it, but okay.
Thank you, Phil. Kate and Amanda both have their hands up. Kate, do you have a preference on who goes first?
Yeah, I want to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm
Sure.
just curious, I really appreciate the call to folks who have not participated necessarily previously. And I'm especially sensitive to folks who may have small children, and that getting out might be difficult or even meeting at night. And so I just want to put the idea out there that possibly this group could be more flexible in the timing of its meetings to allow some voices that have some experience to share possibly and thoughts to share, but don't often have an opportunity.
Thank you, Kate. I especially like that. Just to share, the community association at my daughter's school does that. One month the meeting will be a morning coffee, and then the next month it's an evening Zoom. And so for that exact reason, to try and make it a little more equitable for people who have different schedules. So I actually think that's a really excellent idea to apply to this task force as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Amanda, there you are. Yes, Amanda, yes.
I was just going to add to Phil's question that it's a preference, not a criteria. So that's a clear distinction of it's just to encourage people that wouldn't typically get involved.
Thank you. Again, my 2 cents on that. I actually appreciate that. I have heard from some folks in my travels around town that they feel like for something like this, they might be precluded, that there might be a preference for folks who have been involved in steering these kind of things for many moons. And I definitely value that experience. But the thing that excites me most is hearing from people who have ideas, but haven't necessarily felt like they were empowered to share them. So I appreciate that you are encouraging folks who haven't participated before, but we're not restricting it to that so that we can leverage the experience that we have as well. So thank you. Good question, Phil, and great comments from everybody. Any other discussion around this particular initiative? All right. So if I understood, we don't have to take any action tonight. We're deferring that. All right.
That's correct.
Fabulous. Excellent. All right, then our next agenda item are our minutes. We have minutes from January 7th, 2025, which was our regular meeting, and then January 14th, 2025, which was our meeting at the Finance Commission hearing.
I did want to, Madam Chair, I wanted to make a point of clarification. We had discussed, but I did split up the motion into 2 different motions, for one for January 7th, the other for January 14th, knowing that, not all members were at the meeting on the 14th.
Thank you. All right, so let's start with January 7th. Did everyone get a chance to read them? And did anyone have any comments or suggestions or changes? I'm not seeing any. If that's the case, then I would entertain a motion about the minutes from January 7th.
I move that the planning board approve the minutes for the meeting on January 7th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Kate,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Josh.
I wasn't there, so abstain.
Oh,
Yes.
you weren't there on the 7th. Okay. All right. Thank you. I vote aye. Motion carries. All right. And then I would entertain a motion on the minutes from the 14th.
I move that the planning board approve the minutes for the meeting of January 14th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Kate,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Josh,
Abstain.
Sean.
Abstain.
Thank you. And I vote aye. Motion carries. All right. Thank you. See, next agenda item is agency and committee updates. Has anyone been to any meetings that they would like to report out on?
Sure. So the Ped Bike Safety Advisory group committee, I don't even know what we are, sorry. We met last week. It was we had two residents join who are not part of our group. It was great to have folks join. Unfortunately, we ran a little bit long, so we weren't able to take comments from everyone. But we meet monthly, and we're meeting. And then I also, I think since our last meeting, Nora, check me on this. We've had the off leash dog area working group meet again. I just will let this group know it's a little bit of a convoluted process. It's a working group. We don't necessarily have a single target that we're working towards. So this one's a little convoluted, but I'm hoping to get some clarity and move forward. It's a very engaged group of residents, and trying to move it forward. It's just convoluted. Thanks. That's all I have.
No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Kate, I actually was curious if there was any discussion around the select board conversation around the potential warrant article for a 25 mile an hour speed limit adoption at the pet bike committee.
There was, and I shared my thoughts with them, which is, if Ped Bike wants to, first of all, they were disappointed, right? It's something they would have liked to see. They had some thoughts on how the presentation may or may not have been done better, or received without question. And my suggestion to the group was that that they possibly reach out to the planning department and see how they can support efforts going forward. And that I thought our chair did a great job presenting. So I was very pleased, and it just might not be the year for it. You know what I mean? We're planting the seeds. It might be another year.
I would think that because I'm an advocate for it. There was an accident. I live in the Maze, and the Maze had a car accident this morning. Motorist speeding to get to the high school, which is often the case. And it is just very unfortunate that two cars just going the wrong speed in a very dense area. I would hope that we could, I'd love to start the process earlier and try to get it for next year if possible, because I think it's something that needs to be done.
Yeah, thank you. And I think if Ped Bike Safety or Advisory, or I'm not sure what your current title is either, but I don't think it would hurt, because they are an advisory board to the select board, for, if that board wanted to send a letter as well expressing support over the initiative, I don't think it would hurt. the more support from other boards and recommendations would probably be a good thing.
I mean, with all due respect, Madam Chair, I just think that group needs to be better aligned with what's already been happening instead of possibly creating an entire new, like I said, I'm just noticing that there's some poor alignment across groups that I'm hoping we'll be able to work together a little bit better. So
Excellent
a
point.
letter may be on its way, but I'd love to see some ducks get in a row before anything's drafted.
Thank you. No, that's fair, because we as a board did agree that we were going to stay on top of it and continue to support the initiative and advocate that the select board do the same.
I would love to have follow-up, Kate. I'll support anything that happens there.
Great.
And just to add to that, I did have a conversation with the chief after that select board hearing, and we'll be looking to have him attend a planning board meeting at some point later this year to speak further on that.
Excellent. And that was going to be my next question, about just kind of the process moving forward, not to be answered tonight, but just as we are all, I think, unified in being invested in seeing this move forward, whatever we need to do as a board, as far as discussions or initiatives, as much as we can, understanding that we can only make a recommendation and provide support since we can't actually implement anything on that front. Whatever we can do from town staff, how to advise us to keep engagement on that moving. I think it's priority for all of us. So I'm just putting that out there now. I think we'd like check-ins on that over the next several months on as a board, how we can continue to assist. Thank you, Sean. Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that topic, I've identified some data sets from the state that I think have some interesting data on the speed limit. I've got a data set now of when towns enacted those changes under Mass General Law. And there's also some data sets on traffic accidents by town. And I'll see if I can do some jerry-rigging of numbers to see if we can get any interesting insights out of it as well.
Excellent.
Very
Thank you.
extracurricular, and a little off topic, but thanks.
Well, I mean, given that that's what the select board said they wanted to see, was more data before they decided whether or not it would be an impactful thing to do to make that change. I think that is actually very pertinent. So thank you for taking the initiative on that.
I would amend the word jerry-rig to use clarification. Just not playing lawyer, but the word jerry-rigging caused me a little concern.
Yeah, no, I will be conducting robust statistical analysis.
Robust. I love robust.
Robust. Cancel out jerry-rig. That was the wrong term. Thank you, Phil.
Just didn't want it in the minutes.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for the discussion around that and the continued support. Was there any other updates from agency or committee meetings that anyone would like to share? Yes, Sean.
So we just had our start of the year trick, Three Rivers Interlocal Council meeting. It really is a great group. There are many planning directors from other towns in the group, and then a few oddballs like me who elected officials or others who kind of come at it with a different perspective. That said, they are soliciting ideas right now for some of the trick meetings throughout this year. So if any of my fellow board members or any staff or others have questions that you're kind of interested in loosely benchmarking against other towns or hearing some perspectives on, let me know and I might float them as potential topics to our trick coordinator at MAPC, because it could certainly be interesting and I might have some insights to bring back to you.
Thank you. Any other updates from any other meetings, working groups, etc.?
Could I just ask one question? Because I know there's a public meeting coming up at the library on FS1, and I'm hopeful to be able to attend, but I don't know if we have a quorum or if we have too many people there, if that is going to be a concern. So I just wanted to throw that out. If there were others that we're planning to attend because don't want to trip over any lines.
Excellent question and point. I guess, could we advertise if enough people, we still have time to advertise if enough people wanted to go, right?
What day is it?
Excellent. I think it's,
What-
yeah, February 4th, I believe.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just, given some of the discussions going on in the last select board meeting and all the things happening, I'm curious and I'd like to, I'm planning on attending.
We can
That
advertise
sounds,
for that.
yeah, I think it might as well. That way, if enough people are free and choose to go, we don't run into any issues.
Or
Excellent.
rather, post the meeting notice.
Right, right. Thank
Thanks.
you. Good point, Phil. Thanks for that. And hopefully we'll all see each other there. I think that'll be a worthwhile meeting. All right. Any other questions around outside meetings and other agency reports or anything of that nature? I'm not seeing any. So our next agenda item is miscellaneous updates and administrative items. I'll turn the floor over to town staff.
Yes. We hit a snag in our budgeting for the year. So basically, with the recent advertisement for the warrant articles, there was a error in the date advertised, so we had to re-advertise that. In re-advertising that cleared out, really, I mean, we work a bare bones kind of budget to begin with, and so that cleared out the remainder of our budget. So going forward for advertising as it relates to specific special interest hearings, we are going to look to consolidate them into one posting as we move forward. So at the start of the fiscal year in July, we'll be looking to make sure that we have advertising for any hearings outside of our regular kind of zoning hearings to make sure that they're clustered in an attempt to prevent any budgetary concerns.
Thank you.
Did that one re-advertising that had to occur caused us to essentially have a budgetary issue? Because that's
So the budget for
strikes me
hearings
as extraordinary.
well, the budget for hearings is usually very bare bones, and it's just enough to usually cover the planning board's annual zoning amendment hearing. This year, in addition to the zoning amendment hearing, we had a hearing on climate action plan. We were planning a hearing on the these design guidelines, which I think with the timing will not occur until after July anyhow, so that's not a problem. But we also need a hearing on the housing production plan update. And all of those hearings cost additional money. When we had to re-advertise for the zoning amendment hearing, that added more than $1,000 in cost. The line item is $1,000. So it's a very expensive era, and we have to be careful not to make those errors in the future. But
Wow.
even
Okay.
without that error, next year, budgets are very tight coming up for the fiscal year. We're finishing fiscal year 25. We drew from other line items to fill the gap with all the additional hearings that we had and with that error. But now going into fiscal year 26, we've been asked to level fund our budgets. That means that we again will only have $1,000 total budget for advertisement. So we're going to run into the same problem if the planning board chooses to have a large number of zoning amendment articles. We pay per word. So this
We pay
time
per
we
word?
had seven articles. It's expensive to advertise 7 articles. That's not a way of asking the planning board to limit what it wants to do. We will find a way to pay for it. We'll pull from other areas if we need to, but we have to be as careful and as judicious as possible. So when the planning board does schedule a hearing on design guidelines, it would be a great idea to have a single hearing for design guidelines, for changes to the scenic road regulations, for any updates to the subdivision regulations, or any of your special permit regulations, EIDR regulations. Do it all at once. Open a single hearing, one advertisement. Will save money that way. And then we'll also, knowing that we have to advertise for the housing production plan update as well. So between those three hearings, housing production update, planning board regulations, and assuming that the board is going to have other zoning amendments next year, we already know we'll exceed the $1,000 that we're budgeting. So we will find a way to do it. Luckily, the Department of Community and Economic Development is has a bottom line budget for all of its divisions. And at the end of the year, so far, we've been lucky that there's always a little bit extra and we're able to balance it. If we got to the point where we overran all of those budgets because of necessary hearing costs, then we would have to ask the finance department for a transfer of funds from somewhere else. Hopefully we won't get to that point, but just, I think Elijah was just pointing out to you now that we're done with hearings. This one hearing for your zoning amendment is going to have to be it before July. July 1st, we start a new calendar, a new budget, and we'll be careful in how we schedule hearings in the next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's illuminating. Thank you, Nora.
I like that word, Phil. Illuminating. I honestly had no idea what our budget was for advertising hearings, nor how much it costs to advertise our public hearing for the zoning amendment.
So cost of advertisements
no,
have gone up
no.
substantially, and budgets do not go up substantially. Budgets creep up only as much as absolutely necessary. I would say prior to the pandemic, we would probably pay about $350 for a zoning advertisement, even if we had 8, 9, 10 articles. There are a couple of things that add to the cost. One is the additional verbiage that's needed for post-pandemic virtual hearings. The notice is considerably longer, and how we word our articles can also have an effect. So the more complicated the articles are, the longer the titles, it costs more money. And then the cost of the advertisements has gone up. Years ago, we had the Westwood Press and the Hometown Weekly. We had two options. We now only have one. So Hometown Weekly is the only business in town, unless we want to go to the Herald or the Globe, which would be even more expensive. We'd be talking about $3,000 for an advertisement if we went there. So it is what it is. We have to pay the costs.
Thank you. No, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing
Amanda.
one thing I'll also add is you probably notice the Hometown Weekly looks different now when you get it in the mail, and that's because they went to a new printer in December, and that printer has higher fees, so they also increase their fees as a result of that.
Yeah, I was wondering, it suddenly got larger, looked more like a newspaper than an advertisement, which is not a bad thing, but that makes sense. Thank you. Kate, yes.
Madam Chair, I actually had a comment using a question using Nora's comment as a segue to the next item. But I did want to say before we move on to upcoming board meetings that I actually thought it was free. I thought it was free.
That
So
would be nice. Unfortunately,
I've
it's
learned
not.
a lot.
Kate, there's nothing free in this world. What are you
I know.
kidding? Come on.
Of course, but sometimes it takes people saying it out loud. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that costs money.
I had no idea it was that expensive, but
It is. And in most cases, your hearings are funded by the applicants, and those applicants have to pay those costs. So it's unfortunate, but unless there are changes to state law, this is how we are required to advertise.
Nora, speaking of which, any update on the Zoom virtual meeting deadline of March?
No, I understand there's a bill in progress, but it has not been approved yet. So as of today, we're going back to live in our first meeting in April.
Okay.
I would like a gavel. I'm just putting that out there now. We'll only have a couple of meetings before we reorganize the board. I would like a gavel.
You might have to find that gavel, Nora. I'm sure there's dust on it somewhere.
I think we need
I know just where it is.
swag. I want to get some either hats or some kind of, scarves or something for all planning board members.
You get nameplates, or they used to have nameplates.
Nameplates? Okay.
Yeah.
What do those cost?
Not very much.
Okay.
Less than advertising in the paper. Kate, yes.
Madam Chair, I'm gonna just make a suggestion to the planning department that your acquisition of a gavel should cost about $1,000.
The rose gold plated.
Yeah.
We do have a gold one now. It's flat, but it would work. It was.
In all seriousness, I'm delighted at the idea of being in person with everyone, but I've already heard from some residents that they're hoping we'll at least be able to continue with hybrid, that will be allowed because people they find it easier to participate regularly in not just our, but everybody's meetings when they have the option to dial in while they're cooking dinner or don't need to get a babysitter. So I'm hopeful that that provision for, even if it's just for not the board members and just for participants to be able to attend and participate virtually, I'm hoping that that continues because I think our engagement has been enabled to be higher because of that. So just putting that out there. I know we have no control over that, but okay, so that is a helpful update. Kate, was that what you wanted to ask about for upcoming meetings? All right, excellent. With that, I'll move on to our.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry.
So along the same lines, so the housing production plan, we released the community engagement section last week. So that's now open for comments. And the housing partnership will be meeting in early February to go over that and make revisions. We've also been sharing updates to the first section, the community needs assessment, as we've gotten new information. Because the community engagement, we got more survey responses than we expected. We ended up prolonging the timeline for this to write this middle section. And then on top of that, we have budget constraints. So we're still looking at probably a new fiscal year for approval, which we were expecting before this happened anyway. But I've also applied for funding from a source that has funded other parts of this plan that I'm hoping can allow us to still advertise for this and then potentially combine with other hearings like tree guidelines, things like that. So we're going to try to be creative with it as possible, but please check out the new sections that have been released and we'll keep you posted.
If you go to the town website, you can search housing production plan and it'll be the first option on that search list.
Excellent. Yes, thank
So,
you.
yeah, if you search it, and then every revision has been posted if anyone is curious.
Thank you. Thank you for all your continued work on that and for sharing those new sections so quickly. Any other comments on that, on the housing production plan, on anything from anyone? Before I move on to the next item, I don't want to cut anyone off. All right. With that, then I'll move on to item number 8. We have upcoming board meetings. We have our meeting on February 11th, 2025, which again opens our public hearing for our proposed warrant articles for our spring town meeting. We have a meeting on March 4th, 2025 and March 18th, 2025. We also we have the Finance and Warrant Commission article sponsors meeting on February 25th, and I believe the 26th would be, if needed, 2025, and then again on March 25th, and again, I believe the 26th would be, if needed, 2025. I'm seeing people nodding, so I did not misspeak there. All right, that is all we have on our agenda for the evening, so if nobody else has anything to add, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to close.
Thank you, Kate.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on adjournment? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Bill?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening and
Have a great
see you
night.
next time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good night.
everybody.